We don't
Okay,
do it.
Wade, motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
Okay, motion approved, carried, thank you. We're here for, basically to discuss the store. And fortunately, we've got several members here from the Horry County Council on Aging to help us with that. A packet has been prepared that gave us a history of the building, the store, and how it got established, knowing that you're all brilliant, knowledgeable, intelligent, responsible members of the committee, that you've read this, and I'm sure you've probably got it comprehended. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by reading it to you. However, I'm going to ask Mr. Knight to probably make some comments regarding the first couple of pages about the history of the store.
Thank you, Mr. Schwarzkopf. Well, the writing gives you a kind of a history of how we got to where we are. The shelter home had been in operation for a number of years. They moved these two houses in from the beach. And then they got caught into the new changes of the laws for security and personnel, and they had to meet the same everything over here as they had to meet at hospitals, and they just had to close up because of new rules and regulations. And we figured the best thing to do was buy the property. It was in the front yard, and didn't know who else would have bought it or whatever. So the board agreed to that. We had a formal appraisal done, and we purchased the property.
That isn't a bad price.
No, with all
Very reasonable.
square footage and everything that was involved at the time. Well, a couple of years before that, Danny Hardy and some of the staff here had gone to Texas for convention and went to a private landfill that had a resale store. So Mr. Hardy kind of brought that idea.
Was theirs on site?
Yeah. And of course, they had a zoo, and they had a wildlife refuge and zebras and everything, so they was pretty spiffy.
Well endowed, sounds like.
Yeah, convention center that had, well, it was, I didn't see it, but sounded like it was pretty big. Then I talked to Lane and the Council on Aging about the possibility of a partnership on doing a store, and Mr. Schwarzkopf told us that there was an established store, resale store in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So we, Ray and Elaine and me and Donna flew up and visited about 2 days in Ann Arbor, and it was kind of a private group. Had a lot of volunteers, and they had we got a lot of good ideas from them. The first things they said, don't get in the clothing business, don't get in the shoe business, in mattresses and stuff like that. So we brought that information back, and we developed a memorandum of understanding with Ray and Elaine and that group, and it's gone well. When you look at the financials, it was $97,429 pumped through that store last year.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of items at $3 and $4 and $5 and $10
Oh,
a
yeah.
piece. That is just, it's phenomenal. But it's not like we've grown out of space. We've lost space. The house on the Conway side is, it can't be repaired. We've already started talking about, we're getting somebody in to do, check the mold and lead paint and stuff like that. It's got to come down. It's just it's a hazard, and we don't use the second floor of the building that we're actually in because narrow stairways, it's a safety hazard, and we just don't use the second floor anyway. So I think if you will look at the site plan, it shows you how much space is on site, how much space that we've lost, and really how much space that we're utilizing.
Yeah, what
at
Danny's
the time.
talking about is on page 13 and 14, 15, et cetera, in your book, so, goes all the way up to 17.
And back in 2013, we had discussion about the store, and Mr. Gray, his position was there was 10 more agencies that was doing the same kind of stuff, and they ought to come out here and run it, and he took it upon himself to contact those and line something up, and he never did quite get that, and he finally told me, he said, just go ahead and run it like you've been doing. So, and that's kind of what we did, and then in 2014, we developed another split of the profits, and that was done in 2014, and of course, the memorandum of understanding spells that out. But in this year's budget, we're proposing $130,000 budget figure. And that was a price that the contractor gave us for the budget process. And I think that price was $110,000 for the building. We got 20 in there kind of as a contingency. That's for enclosed metal pre-engineered building, concrete floor. And we feel like the additional amount we'll be able to wire it and put lightings in. And this is a storage building. I don't want to get caught up that it's a brand-new retail store. Then you get into fire codes and all that type thing, but it's basically storage. And the Council on Aging Board has approved that they will pay us, we will front the money, we will build the building, they'll reimburse us over 10, 13 years, something like that, out of their profit each year. And that's where we are. Now, we've got a lot of stuff in here about Council on Aging, and because there was a lot of questions sent to us about the Council on Aging, and that's the reason that this information is in there about reporting, who's on the board, and I think, at the appropriate time, Ray and Elaine can, I think, answer all those questions. But while they're here, I would encourage us, ask those type questions that are kind of worrying about the agency, and I think once we hear from them, I think everybody has agreed that the agency is doing a great job in Horry County, and doing it well, so.
Well, you got any questions for the Council on Aging?
Um,
Any comments that Danny had made?
I'd like to start with the investigation that was done at the beginning of the process, and ask about the two model that you investigated, the one in Texas and the one in Michigan. Are they structured similar to what we have, a memorandum of understanding? Did the host agency maintain the facility like our
Yeah,
structure?
The
Is it
one in
structured similar?
Ann Arbor is run by a group that's Recycle Ann Arbor. And I think that started out as a recycling do-good group that just grew into major recycling campaigns. And I've got a blurb in there that what they do with their proceeds from the reuse center go towards operational costs of the center and to fund other sustainable programs that benefit the local community, such as Recycle Ann Arbor's environmental house. So yes, they were taking the profits, putting back into the house.
They were doing projects like that clear back in the 70s. I mean, they have a reputation for.
And they had volunteers working there, doing the work, but their main staff were paid. They were paid staff, and we questioned that. And you know, everybody knows volunteers will come and go, but you got to have somebody there at 8 o'clock to open the door. So, but it was a pretty big, pretty nifty group that was doing it. They had one drop-off center, kind of like one of our recycling centers, and they had even gotten into reusing wood and pulling wood out, and I think we can do some paint and stuff like that if we got a place we can store it. And we have a lot of 5-gallon quarts that comes, it's never been opened. And I think we can sell a bunch of that, even though we're using a bunch of the paint now on daily cover, mixing it with the daily cover material. But household hazardous waste is still a big impact on our budget. But I just think the storage area will just give us more room to operate, and I think more room that they will be able to both profit more from having more room.
What was the source of the 6.8% that was proposed in April of 2014?
That was Ms. Creech's,
Insistence?
that was her issue, and I've got the minutes of that meeting.
I read the minutes, and
Yeah.
basically it was proposed just to make sure that we would get at least 6.8%.
I think the prime issue at the time, the way we were figuring it, we take the income, the total revenue, we would pay the expenses, then we would split it 50-50. And somehow or another, she thought it looked like we were paying the people at the store. And so this is the formula that we came
Yeah,
up.
you track your costs, we track our costs, and we compare the numbers at the end of the year, and, you know.
And they've got their cost, we know our cost.
Well, you run everything as a cost center, so we pretty much already were keeping figures. I want to ask Jan, do we even include maintenance of the grounds and our costs that we keep on the store?
Not, any of the major repairs that we do over there, yes.
Repairs.
Any kind
How
of
about the cutting of the grass, the upkeep?
Like I said, we do utilize one of our staff members here. He goes over and maintains the yard, that type of thing. I think from time to time, even less, and some of them have also, the gentlemen that work over there, they also maintain it themselves. But any kind of repairs that are done to the building, we do track that.
You track that.
We get reimbursed off the profit each year, any expenses associated with the store.
The deliveries, that comes out of Fund 6?
Yes,
So
sir.
we're reimbursed by the county for deliveries that are made.
That's right, versus them taking it into the landfill.
Now, how about the taking of the landfill? Do we track the expenses when we
No.
dispose of things that aren't selling?
No, we
do not.
take
We do
that, through the center. We don't track that.
And it would be fantastic, I don't know how much time or effort you want to spend on this, but I would love to be able to tell the public the airspace we're saving. And there needs to be some way of doing estimates of what we're saving.
I think we weigh the stuff that goes.
We do weigh, anything that doesn't sell, we do weigh that as it goes up onto the landfill or whatever.
So we know
But we're not weighing it as it's
coming in,
to the store.
yeah.
right.
So you're right, we did talk about that, trying to come up with some
Yeah.
sort of method. But like I said, a lot of times there's donations that are made, so it's not necessarily just stuff coming from the recycling centers was where we were.
Because there are drop-offs right here.
That's right, yes, sir.
Some's left at the gate, on Sunday afternoon, and, you know,
Is there any estimate that we can arrive at that's reasonable in assuming what we're saving? Because that's what's really missing from this analysis. We would like to be able to crow about the amount of good that we're doing. And if you don't measure it, we really don't know the value of that thing that we're most concerned about, which is saving airspace, yeah.
it's hard to get the measurements as it comes in. I mean, we know, I don't know how we could do that.
Nothing occurs to me, but that's why I'm asking. Because it would really be, you don't want an audit trail, that would just be overkill for this information. But it would be nice if we could arrange an estimate quarterly or something of what is,
Do we have a place at the recycling center that identify donation areas, like a donation area? I don't think.
Yeah, there's a couple of them's got the backyard Sears type building that people put stuff in. And then we pick it up. We got two trailers, enclosed trailers, that we fill up, and then we bring over. Yeah, but, so you don't wait to go into the recycling center. All we know is what goes to the hill that comes out of the recycling center. We know what recycle goes through the MRF. But, to get a weight to compare, we just know there's a lot of stuff that doesn't go to the landfill that comes out.
When you walk through the store, you can just look at the volume that's over there and you can say, wow, you know, would probably be so many dumpsters, so many truckloads full, whatever else. And it's basically not going up on the hill, it's not going in the landfill. And, you know, it's a difficult thing to
Oh,
calculate.
what I see out there, most of that stuff is bulk stuff like bicycles
Yeah.
and furniture, which will give you some idea, based on things not going in out here that would be out there. If you may be able to look at the kind of stuff that they got up there and come up with some general idea, but I don't know how you do that. But I know it's major bulk stuff.
if we could just ask staff to estimate rooms of furniture,
Yeah, I don't.
something that they could quantify easily just based on their observation.
If I may, I know that when we went to Ann Arbor, the one thing, and this certainly isn't my business about how the hill grows and that, but the gentleman who did the presentation there, he raved about how much was kept off the hill. And then therefore, it prolonged the ability to fill that hill.
That's our objective, and that's what we're achieving, but if we don't have that number, it's hard to,
Quantify.
since it's so hard to quantify, it's hard to give a complete picture of what we're doing here. Without knowing that, that's the missing quantity that would make this decision of how we are to go forward much easier. If we knew that number,
Well, I'd venture to guess and bet money that if we could keep it dry out of the weather, there'd be less going to the hill. Because now, you have to put stuff sometimes on a porch, it rains on it, then, you know, a couple of rains in it, it's not used.
useless.
Some TVs, they'll get TVs working over there, but, sometimes they don't, they can't get them working, and the other resale stores, I don't even think take TVs anymore, so, we will think about trying to quantify how we can do that.
How much do they normally pieces sell for? You said $3, $4, $5?
Well, it runs from
depends on-
$1 for a cookbook to maybe $15 for a oak cabinet.
I mean, we had revenue of $97,429 divided by just say average of 5. That's still not, you know, if you say you got $5 a piece out of everything, that's 19,000 pieces that went through there.
Yeah, I would say,
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
I mean,
19,000 pieces is a pretty low.
It's a fair amount.
That's a big, that's a
On
big
an average
number.
of $5 a piece.
yeah, and
Isn't Vance coming down here next week sometime?
He'll be here Thursday.
He does, he's always looking at, you guess he could maybe look at the amount of stuff we have up there and maybe give us some rough idea of what he thinks based on, like you say, 19,000 pieces of stuff, and this is basically large stuff. Maybe he could give us some quantitative idea of what he thinks.
We
that
have to
would say.
track this information, and we need to find a reasonable way to accommodate it, and the staff could spend some time thinking about how we could do that, because we need that information.
If we sold $97,000 worth, somebody ought to be able to tell us how many pieces that we sold. It might be a lot more than 19,000 pieces.
Could be.
Probably is.
Probably is.
Because there's a lot of small items over there.
Remember we
Yeah,
weighed
yeah.
the couch? Remember how
Well-
we tried
Yeah.
for that month and we weighed a couch? Then we would say if you had so many sofas come in, it was heavy. It was like 150 pounds. And that first month we did try and it was huge. I forgot how many tons it was the first month. I don't know if you remember or not.
That's
We
a
tried,
possibility. If you do an audit for a time period and then use.
use it for the
and then
whole year.
extrapolate it for the whole year, might be one way of doing it.
So if it was 19,000 items at an average of even so many pounds, 5, 10 pounds, even that's
If your
huge.
staff could just come up with a reasonable guesstimate of what that is. We just need to have a reasonable estimate. Because we're not measuring this, our purpose isn't fulfilled of doing this. We're just guessing we're doing the right
Is
thing.
it practical for us to purchase a scale out there to
No.
folks or
No.
not?
It could be photographed.
No.
Photos?
Photos might be the
Yeah.
easiest, most simple way to do it.
I think one thing we need to remember too, I agree with Bo completely. This number is more important to me than the financial side of whether
Yeah.
we're getting a return on.
Yeah.
But there's so much more than airspace that we're considering over there. There are so many intangible, there's so much that's accomplished with what the store is able to help them provide. That if you want to count the goodwill, if you want to count the number of meals that they feed, if you want to count our involvement in the community with them and the goodwill that's coming out of that and that we're able to help, I think the first thing that made me study them a while back was when I realized that some of the people you deliver meals to, that's the only human contact they have. And I don't think you can put a number on that. I think your number is critical. I think we need to know that, and I think there's a way to do that as long as we don't make it cost prohibitive. It's never going to be an exact number
No.
unless we spend more than it's worth to know the number. I think taking the number of articles, estimating the weight, multiplying that, I think that's a very reasonable way to do it. But as we're thinking about this, I just want to, I can't stress enough how important that number is, and also I can't stress enough is that number and the airspace we save is only one part of what's accomplished here.
Good point, too. We should also present that information and not just, even if we can't quantify it, so that, because it's an exercise in futility if you're not tracking your impact. You're just guessing. And some of these things will include guessing. I've been involved in a lot of volunteer efforts. You don't want to criticize the people who are volunteers. You don't want to criticize people who are not highly paid for what they're doing, and you don't want to give them so much work to do that their work is drudgery. But we do need to be able to measure the impact to the community that we are doing in some sensible way. And we just need to come to that agreement as to what that sensible way is, if you will.
I agree with you completely, but as usual with volunteer work, sometimes it's hard to put a number on that.
Yeah.
But the communication thing, the involvement and letting the public know what's going on, that we're a part of it, I think is wonderful.
It really turns out that the store, in many cases, is probably one of the better kept secrets in Horry County. There's a lot of good things that are happening over there, and 90% of the people in Horry County
Or
don't.
just aren't aware of it. And that
That's right.
troubles me a lot.
Yeah, you know, for lack of a better term, we almost need to, and it's getting another issue here, is almost develop a public relations, marketing, some kind of program.
And the reason I asked about how we arrived at that 6.8% is because I would be willing to suggest to our board that that 6.8% be our advertising budget to promote that store.
Well,
Because the idea, and that's why if we don't have the information of what we're saving and what we're accomplishing, once we do the promotion, then we would have a base point to start seeing how effective that promotion is. Because again, it's an exercise in futility if you don't measure your progress.
well, I think, back at the recycling centers, on those buildings, there needs to be communication that items can be purchased at the store on Highway 90. Because I know at my recycling center, and I haven't been to all of them, but I really don't get no notice of that, you know.
We can
what's in
promote
that-
it right there.
What's in that building, where's it going, how can you get your hands on it? There's a bicycle in there, I'd like to have it, but where can I buy it at? You know, is it going to the landfill, I don't know.
Yeah.
But if we put a big sign up there.
Absolutely.
On that building that says, in this building, please donate anything that can be reusable. At the same time, how do you get these? Anything in these items can be for sale at a reduced rate at the store on Highway 90. Therefore, we can increase what goes into that building, decrease what goes to the landfill, and increase our exposure and ability to sell it.
The only thing we have added in terms of advertising is to use those placards around the county at our 10 sites. We put them in some public places that will allow it as well. Although our website currently is under reconstruction, we use our website that's seen by a whole bunch of people to put the store on it.
but
too.
the
So there is
people-
website
The
promotion.
people that's going to use it
Yeah.
are going to the landfill or
Yes.
going to the recycling center.
Yes, they are.
They, on both ends, on the upper end and the lower end. People that's going to give it and the people that's going to buy it are going right there. And we're missing the opportunity to advertise it.
Yeah.
Sam, you're absolutely right. We need to have some information at the convenience centers, at these drop-off points where people, we got these little garage, these little Sears sheds where people put the material to let them know, this is point A, this is where you get to point B, and that's how you get the bicycle or whatever else.
Because you can even put a list on there of items that you carry, bicycle, carpet, paint, whatever else that you may carry, you can put a list of items that we take and sell.
They're all, reusable, yes,
I'm not interested in micromanaging how you all operate. I did review what our year-end analysis and what the costs were, but I do have a question about your expenses. You're, of course, interested in having as much at the end of the year as possible. How do you measure your employee coverage? How do you even come about how many employees you need, and how do you manage your costs to try to get the most out of it at the end of the year?
Well, it's a good question, and our main objective was that we have to have coverage. We tried to have the store early on covered by just volunteers, but we had to have a gal who was responsible on a daily basis that would make the schedule, be responsible for the, funds are being exchanged hands, so we needed someone that we could bond and make sure that they were reliable and trustworthy. And Sue has been there since day one. But to that question, we think that it's very reasonable, considering we have to put that employee and another part-time employee on FICA and workman's comp and all of the things that you have to do. And the return is good. The return is good for our board, it's for us. I don't know that we can get away with it any cheaper on our end without cutting corners. And I certainly always keep my ears out to make sure that no one from this shop complains that we're not doing it right. And Danny and his folks, I don't think we've heard those things. And we've been so incredibly blessed by having such a relationship and partnership with you guys.
And the way that, at the end of the day, they advised us from day one, they didn't want to handle the money, the banking,
So you get daily,
keeping up.
That's right.
We get a daily deposit here, and then we manage the money from then on. We keep an accounting of it, and end of the year, we do the split, write them a check.
When your board was determining how much you contribute towards a new structure, how did you sell them on removing a significant portion of the proceeds that you get as an investment?
Well, again, for them, it's been a no-brainer. This has just been really something that has been a blessing for them. They understand that there's some responsibility. Being a nonprofit, we know, I've invested years in this business telling them nothing is for free. We still have clients who think everything they get should be for free. That's not how it works. If you have a few pennies and you can afford it, we'll take it. It's on a sliding scale. That's the same mentality that the board has. We're going to have to put our share in. If these folks are going way over the line, overboard, all of you, to do this for an agency that gives so much back to the community, we've got to put our share in. It was a no-brainer. They voted unanimously at our last board meeting, which was just last week, to put that amount in. It wasn't yet determined, as Mr. Knight said. It was somewhere between 10 and 13 in that range, but that was okay. They were good with that range because you really didn't know what those bottom line numbers were going to be yet. And it wasn't really a much of
Form of estimate to begin with.
Yeah,
It's not a detailed estimate.
that's correct.
How big a building is it?
50 by 100,
100 by 50.
100 by 50.
Okay. I'm, I was telling Mr. Michael yesterday, I actually left my, site there, a business there, and we're putting up a 100 by 60, 22-foot tall, and it's 150,000 with 6 inches of concrete. And the reason we went with 6 inches of concrete, you might want to remember this too, is because in case you decide to run forklifts or something in there in the future.
Wait.
22 feet tall with 20-foot doors. I got 2 doors on each end, roll-up doors, automatic doors, so you can drive right through, and it's 155 right.
Is it electrified?
Yeah. No, well, they're not putting no electricity in it, but it will be electricity for the doors, I reckon, yes.
When we started getting prices, we looked at drive-through,
Yeah.
high ceiling, but we went and looked at one at Homewood that they'd put in, and it was
Homewood's doing mine.
gonna be there was a tire store they built, and of course, the tire store can put tires up on a damn rack. Over here, we're not gonna be able to stack it high like Home Depot, so we dropped down on the height. First off, we thought about getting a box truck in there to where you could unload it, but we just don't need that ceiling height, so it'd be lost space.
The whole notion of storage, we've had this discussion, Danny, is one that is tough on me. I'd spent 20 years in retail in the executive suite, and my job wasn't the retail side. But the last thing we wanted was storage space. We wanted to sell that. We didn't want to store it.
Oh, yeah.
And storage was lost sales. In fact, I worked for Price Pub, which is the originator of the Warehouse Club. The warehouse was our sales floor. And the vendors, they would deliver their goods, and the clock started when the goods got to the back door, and we had 30 days of their money. But it all sold in 3 days. And that was the money that we used to build the whole thing. So the point I'm getting to is that I need to understand better the utility of what we need to store. I know you're concerned about things that get weather damage, but what's your policy on how much time you keep material before you ask for the truck to deliver it to the landfill or?
We didn't develop a Walmart outline and marketing deal. Whatever business you had, you might not have had storage, but that stuff was somewhere, and a warehouse or something, somewhere, and I don't know where we can't keep this stuff in those sheds because they fill up And then we had to clean the sheds out, we had to bring it someplace. But we didn't set up a marketing plan that we're gonna keep it for 10 days, and then if it's not sold, we're gonna do something else with it. We just, but I think if you look at and how much square footage we have lost on page 13.
You lost half.
I mean, that's, building A had 3,308 square feet in it. Well, we can't use that. The second
My
floor.
thought process is this, and I was telling Michael yesterday, and me coming from a different side, like because we're currently building a building, but storage is never a bad idea. I mean, even if the store goes under, we got a nice building there that we can utilize with the SWA.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The only thing I would mention, you know, I know, or I didn't quite finish up on my conversation a second ago, when you said you wasn't reaching up, but is everything planned on being stored on the ground, or are you gonna have one level of pallets?
Shelves,
Shelves.
it's not gonna be pallets as much as it's just
Not pallets, but a pallet rack?
gonna be shelves, and we won't have, you know, we're not gonna store stuff on a.
And at the end of the day, if you get, you know, if you get it 2-packed and 2 full and it's been ready to go, you can call auctioneer in here and get it gone.
And that's one
But
way
I
to
see a
promote
bunch of,
too.
yeah, I see a bunch of stuff that continually gets wasted right there outside getting wet.
Yeah, and going back to storage, I worked for Sears for a number of years when they first opened the one down here at the Myrtle Mall, first when they opened it years ago. Speaking of storage, my first job was to unload and store in a storage building. You cannot sell everything in that rapid amount of time. You do have to have some storage. And I'd like for us to remind you to remember the real Pacific, if we're talking about advertising more, we're talking about all of these things to bring in more products to be sold, we're gonna have to have somewhere to store that stuff. And I think those are great ideas about the recycling centers to have more stuff come in. And to go back to your point, Bo, about keeping stuff on a 10-day basis or a 15-day
I
basis.
think you need an operating process.
You may have an operating process, but I think this is a whole big different ball game than, like Danny says, a Walmart or Sears. A lot of people just drive by and stop. A lot of people come by all the time. All the things I've heard of for Highway 90 is how much people use the store. And going back to your point about keeping up, a lot of people will just bring stuff down here and drop it off. We won't even know from the solid waste that it's been dropped off down here. So you're gonna have a hard time figuring out how many people just bring. We'll be able to deal with the recycling places, people who contact us to bring it, but we're not gonna be able to keep up with people who bring truckloads of furniture in there that says, I just wanna give you this. Okay, so that's so we're never gonna have an exact number. But I can understand people who talk to me about the store are really excited about, number one, they may not know that what's left over is going into the landfill, but they do know that they get great values and great deals from what they get up here. And I don't think they're not into the real points about the airspace. That's a good saving. I don't even know if they'll understand. I don't know if they'll even understand when we tell them that. But from a goodwill process, when we tell them that we're giving them a good deal and keeping stuff out of the landfill, that's something that they can understand.
Well, I think the biggest difference, Bo, and you tell me if I'm wrong, you guys had a part of your organization that decided what you were gonna buy. That's an option we don't have.
No.
We take what we get. I think that's a double-edged sword.
But if you-
Yours were planned, and you knew what was hot, you knew what color was going, what product was going. I think the not knowing what you're gonna find when you go over here is one of the
One of
biggest
the reasons
draws we
people
have.
come, yeah.
So they don't care whether it's been there a week, a day, or a month. When they find it and say, that's what I've been looking for, then they're happy.
Yeah, that's when you break your coffee pot
Yeah,
and you run down to the store to see if you can find one out of all of those different coffee pots.
And you
got
will.
there, so that you don't have to go down to Walmart and spend
and see if they got one that'll fit it.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Mr. Ives,
But, yeah, I think in your business, it worked wonderful. I'm not sure that theory of not knowing what you're gonna sell.
The concern about storage killed the wholesale business, and just-in-time delivery came out of that whole
Yeah.
idea that storage is dead. And that's why I'm asking this question and couching it, that it came from a major retailer, and you also had competition for everyone selling the same goods. So your competition was completely different, too.
I agree with all the above, and everybody that's in business knows exactly what a square
And if
foot
we're
is producing in money, but you gotta have some dead square feet in there.
But the word dead is what concerns me. We need storage space, and I want to be convinced that we need it and not that we're wishing things over there just to get them out of the rain.
No, I don't think I don't think anybody has. I think getting it out of the weather is a part of it. I think cleaning up the yard is a part of it. I think being able to have a better presentation is a part of it. But that is not and we're using the term storage space, but we're not putting that in there indefinitely. That's a rotation thing that goes on.
I just want to make sure there's a process for how this
Yeah,
is done.
I don't know of anybody other than the people running the store.
That would have an idea.
No, I mean, I was talking to him this morning, and she said, we were talking about what's upstairs, what you can't get to because of, one building's bad, and she said, I got some air filters up there that are odd sizes that we're gonna get rid of. Now, we'll try to sell them all at one time for near nothing. If that doesn't work, we'll dispose of them, but I don't know of anybody that can control the rotation other than the people running the store.
Controlling the rotation is difficult, and when Mike was at Sears, I'm sure that you would have washers and dryers and refrigerators and stoves that are a lot longer on inventory than you probably would baby shoes. And,
yeah.
and I was in the golf business for decades, and, our big concern was how long do we keep shoes around? Because they're not moved fast, but I'll tell you, golf balls and hats, they move quick. And, I think it's really difficult to put a time frame on how long, we're gonna keep something in storage or whatever else before we decide to move it to the hill. You never know when somebody's gonna come in, they want that washer, or they come in when they want a pair of shoes.
Well, I got a question. I wanna take a right turn here. What is upstairs in the store?
What's upstairs?
Upstairs, yeah. You're saying the second floor is not usable. What's up there?
Well, you just.
He said air filters.
there was-
Upstairs in the building that needs to come down is old, odd air filters, however, upstairs in the store, there's basically.
Yep.
I'm sorry, in the building that will have to come down is where the air filters were that they're gonna make somebody a heck of a deal to put them on the hill, one or the other. Upstairs in the store is basically empty. Somebody fell coming down those steps right after we opened the store. And so they just decided it was a safety hazard is why the upstairs is not used.
So, why wouldn't we, it's been there, I read somewhere where it started, this thing's been there a long time. Why wouldn't we take the initiative to repair the stairs and turn the upstairs into offices to free up some stuff downstairs?
You've got to meet all the safety requirements upstairs, and you probably be looking at an elevator. To get,
For offices upstairs?
people's got to
It's a
be able to
residential
get there in a wheelchair, yeah. Just like the scale house up here, we had to put a ramp in to that. We put a ramp in over here to meet the, standards, right after we bought
The
the
ADA,
building.
American Disabilities
Yeah,
Act.
And I think that was one of the situations when the shelter homes had it. The repairing of these old homes and meaning the qualifications to keep kids and run it as a shelter home was one of the problems with it. And it would have cost more to do that than to continue to operate the shelter home. And I think that's one of the reasons it left from there. I don't know if it went somewhere else, but it's not there
There was
anymore.
just one point I wanted to make a while ago, just so I could kind of put this in, if you don't mind. It was something Mr. Ives had talked about, and it came about from the gentleman talking about forklifts and that kind of thing. It's not that we're afraid of forklifts, but generally our agency model for hiring has always been, not to discriminate in any way, shape, or form, but we generally hire older people. It's the Council on Aging, everything we do is focused around older people. So we have a lot of folks who are kind of on Social Security, work a few hours here and there. The idea that we would have someone in the store perhaps having to operate a forklift would scare me. Not to say we couldn't change things to get some young folks in there, but that would be something that's a problem. And one of the things that I wanted to add to that was I had no idea in our business, when our workman's comp audit comes around every year, one of the highest rates we have, beside our maintenance guy at the Grand Strand Center in Myrtle Beach for the rating, are the people that work here at the store. Retail stores have one of the higher ratings for workman's comp that you can get. I was completely blown away by that, and it's very expensive.
And the forklift operators are
And the
first.
forklift operator would be even higher. But I'm sorry, I just wanted to put that in there, but we simply couldn't put Sue, I can't see her on a forklift right now. It just wouldn't work out.
But if you think your compensation for insurance going up, you get you a forklift operator.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, thank you.
Oh, you got any other?
I think the idea of a memorandum of understanding is terrific because it spells out what the roles are. It's also written in such a way that there's an easy way to part ways if either agency finds it necessary. I'm really pleased that the Council on Aging is willing to put some money into this structure, because that was one of the concerns I had on the outset when we first started discussing storage, is the need to go to an expense when we're not quantifying the total value of what we're receiving. That was hard enough, but your willingness to make a contribution to that goes a long way to making it more attractive. And I think we should give some consideration to how we would incorporate that into a memorandum of understanding so that we're both protected. The last thing I wanted to bring up was whether there needs to be an advertising of the space available and the goods that are received, such that other charitable organizations might have an opportunity to bid for it. It came about coincidentally that the suggestion is that your agency was a model agency for how this might work because of what was being done up in Michigan. And I'm wondering if there needs to be some type of a way of periodically going out for bid to make sure that there isn't another agency that thinks that their objectives might be met by operating such a facility.
What are you looking to bid out?
The potential to work with us and operate the store.
My feeling is this, and it's a little weird coming from somebody who's almost 78 years old and has never been married. But seeing all my friends and all my neighbors and people I go to church with, whatever else, they've been married for 40 or 50 years and life is good and life is happy. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And if the dog doesn't hunt, then you get a different dog. And that's just basically the way it is. Now, right now, I know that Ray is happy because I brought up one of the crazy wild cliches that I used to use at county council. But that's pretty much the way I look at it. If, if it's not broke, let's not worry about fixing it. If it does have the tendency to be broke, let's check and see what needs to get fixed. And if it can't be fixed, then you're just talking to somebody who, after 15 years, bought a new car. And the reason I bought a new car is because it cost more to get the old one fixed than what it was worth. So if my disappointment is that it cost too much to get it fixed, and I couldn't drive it for another 15 years.
What would be the advantages of bidding it out? Because the same concerns that we're having here, you would have the same concerns with someone else who may bid on it. And the one thing we do know here is that these folks already have a track record that is pretty much intact, but what would be the advantages of bidding it out?
Basically because we're a public agency and the public owns the Solid Waste Authority, and we're stewards of the public's investment. And the public would expect us to do a reasonable look-see of potential suitors for this facility. I'll give you, for instance, I worked in the mayor's office in the city of New Orleans, and we were sued because the World's Fair of 1984, we built to suit a tenant, and that tenant was basically the same operator that does shopping malls around the country that are specialty malls. We were sued by Trammell Crow because they said we didn't go out for bid, and they could have underbid this operator. The problem was they could have underbid it, but they've never operated a shopping center. The firm that we designed it to operated Faneuil Marketplace and other specialty shopping areas, and they had a track record, just as you mentioned, with a track record and the way it's been operating. Those are all things that you would also put into the mix when you're evaluating it. But since we're a public entity, we do need to do the expected. Just in our purchasing, we get multiple bids. We're expected to do a look-see of alternate suitors to use the services that are being derived here. And it doesn't have to be a bidding process as much as it needs to be a search. But we need to go through that step just simply because we're a public entity.
Was the company that sued you a for-profit company?
Yes.
Well, I think that's the first thing, but that's the difference in us and what we're
We won.
doing here.
We won.
I mean, with you in charge, I never doubt.
No, but it was
The other point I'd like to make is I'm a big believer in loyalty and working on relationships. And if we know, if they know and they're comfortable and we're comfortable with them and they're comfortable with us, I think you can get a lot more accomplished than you can if we do a 3-year contract with them knowing it's coming up for bid in 3 years. I'm not so sure that there aren't some people out there wouldn't have a tendency, let me get my mind while I'm here and get what I can because it's coming up for bid and I may be gone anyway. I like long-term relationships.
Well, the way
And
I
think
see it,
that's fine here the way we're doing this.
You know, we're giving it back to the community anyway. Yeah. I mean, right back to them with you know, who's gonna complain or who should complain about us taking the funds and giving it back in meals and stuff like that. I mean, so even though we're a public entity, we're taking our trash and selling it and giving away the funds.
We've been operating this since when?
2011.
2011.
2011, yeah, we've been.
We have a lot of years invested.
And you guys been around longer than I am because you're older than I am. Anybody heard any complaints?
No complaints. I haven't heard any complaints. Have you heard any complaints, Bo?
No.
Okay.
No,
all
I'm not
right. Well,
suggesting that there
I
are.
haven't either. So like I said, you know, as long as the dog's hunting, just let the dog keep on hunting. And when the dog stops hunting, then retire the dog and get one that can hunt.
We'll have a nice storage building and then SWA
Yep.
can just use it.
Yeah, there you go.
There's been a lot of, I'd like Elaine to just tell us briefly what kind of working relationship you got with county council. I know that article that everybody's read back in the day, but explain how your board is set up, who's on the board, where they come from, how you report, and everything, just for the record.
Well, we just left a quarterly report to county council last week. Ray did a really good report. You have a copy of it. But our relationship is so intertwined in this county. My relationship here even, we kind of know, I can tell you that there's not a lot of residual that sits at the store. It turns over very quickly. I'll put that to rest. There may be a white elephant that sits over there over a month, but it's quickly identified and removed. But it's not very often that they take anything to be put on the hill. I know that there's a lot of people on our board who are very close to you guys. Some of our board members are former county council members, so they're 100% with you on everything that you do. So you know that the store's not just about people coming to buy things that they need. It's not just about having the store. There's a lot of political benefits by having relationships with people that can be on your team. And I found that to be true anywhere, but especially in our great independent county that we live in, that I love, that you can't run me away. So having said that, you have a lot of fans that work with Mr. Ray and myself. We have a lot of skin in this game. When we decided to do this in 2011, we sacrificed the payroll all year out of our budget in order to be good stewards. In other words, we were willing to put up that payroll for the whole year in hopes that the store would do. We had no idea that it would do as good as it did. And we were surprised and very happy and have been ever since. Sue's done a great job, but Sue is a person who is the store, and she'll have to train another person, because it takes a very unique person to be able to do that type of business. It's not just a person that you can find through employee search. You would have to go and take a person out of that business to find a person that can wheel or deal, I call it, like Sue can. She has been a great asset to the store, and we are just blessed. But I do understand there are a lot of organizations that might like to take the chance at this, but they would have to have the resources to be able to do what we did. Yeah. And it's not easy to sacrifice $60,000, $70,000 up front, and that's what it takes. So, and we have built this business since 2011. A lot of people do know about the store through our senior centers. They come here and shop. That's a lot of the close to $100,000 is through us. So they know Sue. She used to be a senior center manager. And as a side note, our manager in Bucksport was the shelter home manager for 17 years. So we are very
familiar with the facility, yeah.
Very connected.
Just something to add to what Ms. Gore is saying. I think some of you know, I think Mr. Carl knows, 3 of our board members are county appointment people. So we are more than just intertwined. They actually appoint folks to us. And you know, more than that, we report to them. They are well aware of our involvement with you, and have commented very favorably over the years about our creativity. And I can't help but to say, but in 1994, the budget for this agency was $384,000. Our budget this year is $2.7 million. We take chances. We think outside the box. You have to. Nonprofits, you can't sit back and put your hand out and ask the government to give you money. I'm not that guy. I've been an administrator for 35 years in 3 states in human services. And if you have people like Danny Knight and your board, and other people like the county millage people, when we came to you way back, that we get a piece of the county millage, there's only 2 places in the whole state of South Carolina that get a little piece of millage, and we are so grateful for. We could never do these numbers. There are some fledgling places in Williamsburg and Georgetown, Lancaster. I mean, you know those places. The poorest of the poor people who need it the most get the least. But I just wanted to say that because I think Elaine hit really right on a great target. Our relationship building has been awesome. We go around, we know everybody. Sometimes that's not such a good thing, because, you know, they call you on the carpet about things, and that's okay. We're going to be accountable to you and whoever else, but we just got to do it right. So, but anyway, I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
we just don't know how to say no. I even worked with the South Carolina Tobacco Growers Association because I represented retired ladies whose quota was being diminished. And I don't know how I got voluntold to do that, but I even did that. If you ask me, I always say yes. But all of our doings that we've done, I've been there 32 years. So, you know, this is a success. Whether we go forward with it or not, this has been a great success, and I just hope that if you do decide to do that, that it could be for seniors, because there's so many children's organizations already. It's hard to get people to have a heart when it comes to the elderly, and I hope it would be a success. Always.
I learned something from Elaine last week that as long as I'd been involved with agency, I didn't know, like Meals on Wheels. I said, well, how many of those clients do you have? And I think it's 300.
It's about 320 this week.
320. And I have heard from Mike Besson that he had someone in his family that qualified. And I didn't know what qualified meant. They take the request and send it to the state. The state qualifies if you get the services,
It helps us.
not the local people. And as Mike told me, once his family member got on it, that at time, that was the only person that she saw for months, is the person that brought those meals.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason that she's back in the pit or the dungeon or whatever it is because the freezer's out there that they keep their frozen meals in. But it's just a heck of an organization. It touches a lot of people, and the benefit they gain from the store is that they put more into the services. Yeah, some of their people in the agencies benefit, they get paid. They're salaried. But yeah, we can write up the memo of understanding that as long as that agency is there, they consider reimbursing it. They won't have a little bit of skin in the game. They're gonna have the whole building
We have a lot of skin, yeah.
in the game. That's pretty tough. I might
That's
add
one
big-
reason to ask this question, because of a big expenditure is proposed here, and to make sure the marriage is healthy enough.
Yeah, that would have to be reexamined.
Yeah.
That's not what our board has been told, so I would have to go back and say that,
That's,
you know, the
What we-
prenuptials have changed.
yeah.
And I'm not so sure that they would be okay with that in terms of putting money in, because we're guardians of that, so, but just, you know.
Just a little side note, we're not talking about storage, whatever else. Elaine mentioned how fast things turn over at times in the store. I know an individual that was at the store at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning when it opened. I went to his office and said, boy, I like this set of dishes, whatever it is. I'm going to come back when the office is closed, and I'm going to pick them up on the way home. On the way home, they were gone.
Gone.
And I had a fellow that from Michigan that comes down for 6 weeks and plays golf with us during the winter. And he wanted one of these golf carry-on bags, these big plastic ones where you put back your golf clubs in and send them to the airport. And I told him about the store. And sure enough, on his way coming over to play golf on Thursday morning, he stopped by and he says, at the golf course, he says, Carl, he said, they had about 7 or 8 of those. He said, I'm going to stop on the way back and get one. Well, the next week he came back. He says, I made a mistake. I said, what was that? He said, I should have bought it when I found it because the one I wanted was gone.
That's
You know,
right.
So there is a high turnover. I mean, you know,
Huge.
somebody's worried about that storage building, you know, becoming a haven for stuff that'll never get
Oh, I
sold.
It would be-
That's not going to happen.
It would be good, though, if, as again, the gentleman said, that people in other places knew that this was going on.
Yeah.
Because we know that there are people, as you mentioned earlier, they're regulars. They come every day, sometimes twice. But then there are people down in other parts, Socastee and other places, don't even know it's here.
Yeah.
So it's, in that way, it's kind of sad. It's not fulfilling getting to everyone.
I'll
One-
tell
one-
another anecdote about the store. We had the environmental luncheon here, and all the school teachers come, and we have awards for the schools that do the best environmental programs. And several of them went to the store on their way in, and they realized that they didn't have to continue to serve the food at early college, at CCU, with single-use plastic. They could buy the utensils they needed here at the store and could wash them, and they wouldn't, it would be part of their interest in their environmental education was to stop using single-use plastic. And that was neat, that there was so much silverware there, they could buy a complete setting for all the students in the early college.
Amazing what people throw away.
Yeah.
We have a lot of folks who will say about the store, they'll say, one man's junk is another man's treasure.
Yep.
And that has become somewhat of a slogan, and hopefully it's not derogatory in any way, but that's been what our folks think about it, and it's wonderful.
Well,
Uh,
go ahead, Norfleet.
Elaine, I'd like to ask you one question, and Danny brought it up, and this is no way doubting you guys in any way, but it has been brought up by a board member, so I think we need to clear the air. I don't know whether the article was written by a guy named Paul, or whether it was written like we get a lot of articles written about us, or what it was, but if you would just go ahead and clear the air about the article.
The article that appeared about 4 years ago?
4 or 5 years ago, yeah.
The article that appeared in the paper had to do with the regular meeting times that we were asked to go to the county council's administrative meeting. Typically, they'd ask us to go about every 6 months. We just went last week. There was a period of time we were not asked to go. It was 2 years. It was over 2 years. Well, and I called one time, said, we hadn't come before you in a long time. And for whatever reason, as the article said, we were not asked to go back. But this particular writer also asked, because there was some scuttlebutt going on as a separate note at the state level, at the Office on Aging. There was a lot of changes occurring at the Lieutenant Governor's Office on Aging, and a lot of cuts were occurring. There's a lot of politics. We were told, as the Association on Aging, which I was the vice president of in Columbia, that we were all going to take a substantial amount of a cut because monies were going to be used somewhere else. We came away from the meeting. It just happened to be a day or two later. The reporter called. Well, how come you don't go and do your presentations at the county council? Well, haven't been asked. I'll go right now. We'll go anytime. And by the way, I understand you're going to have some cuts in your budget. I said, well, if things stay the way that they're looking, we may sustain about $100,000 worth of cuts. The reporter did exactly what reporters do and called to the Lieutenant Governor's office, and someone in that office said, oh, no, we're not going to get cuts. That's not going to happen. Well, I'll tell you what, that was a CYA thing, because there was a lot of heat on the people at the Lieutenant Governor's office. How dare they cut monies from the aging program? I can tell you, as I look in your eyes, I was done. I mean, they did me wrong, because then the reporter said, which is it? And of course, they're going to believe someone out of Columbia.
Well, they couldn't hear you, you were under the bus.
It was a serious hatchet job. And once it's written, and I don't have to tell any of you who've been either here or in politics, once it's written, they don't take it back. So I had to, work pretty hard to let people know that I'm not throwing numbers around that are bogus. I do the budget at our place. I find the money for our place. I allocate the money. I write the grants. You're looking at them. This is a two-person operation. But one of the things people don't know, we're not just an aging program that gives services. We have 68 employees. I'd like, and you've been a high-ranking businessman, I say to people all the time, you show me a budget of $2.7 million with 68 employees, now of which only 38 are full-time FTEs. The rest are a lot of part-time Social Security folks. We're putting economy, we're putting people to work. We're also serving people who are at greatest risk of being in nursing homes for $2.7 million. And I'll tell you, I have gotten more heat, more controversy in this county in 25 years. It's unbelievable. Even when Danny was the administrator, it can happen anytime. I'm sorry for the article. There wasn't anything I could do about it. But that article was completely off base and taken out of context.
No, I wasn't doubting that or disbelieving you at all. We've certainly had more than our fair share of those articles. We understood that.
I've read them.
Compared to you, you're like a baby child about bad articles compared to us.
We've also been on various schedules to report into county council. When Carl was chair of INR, we didn't have to go once.
Right.
But,
But I
last
just
year we had to
wanted
go every
that
month.
answer
I would do
in
it
direction.
justice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope that that's sufficient, it's the truth. And I didn't want anyone, if that was addressed, Ms. Gore told me that on the way here, said that there, perhaps somebody can ask a question about an article up here. And since I've been here, we've probably had 50 articles, 60 articles. And I would tell you that probably 55 were really good, and 5 of them were probably not.
You're doing better than we are, so.
Where would you find alternate financing to do the work that you're doing with the funds that you derive here?
I couldn't tell you offhand. I know one thing, it would have a substantial effect on our waiting list. Typically speaking, when there's a waiting list on a home-delivered meal or a homemaker's unit or a transportation, I pull money from this program or a couple of other programs that we have to utilize that. Because the rest of it's fixed. It's fixed. There's set units set by the government and the state. We have to show not only a maintenance of effort from in-kind, which we do over and above, we also have to put real cash money into the program. But it would have an effect on numbers of people. I know we would come up with something, because we would simply not sit back. If we were to lose this situation, we're going to move somewhere else. We'd do something else. This is a great situation. I would never want to trade this off. But as far as I've got another year till I retire, and I'll still work it hard. I've been trying to beg to retire forever, but I think Miss Elaine will probably carry the torch forward.
For a few years.
We have found ways to get it done, because the idea of what we do is to serve the old folks, period. It's what we do. And I always tell people when I speak in front of them at our annual meeting, do not forget who we serve. Those are our customers. Treat them well, respect them, and love them. It's pretty simple. And the people we have working for us are amazing. They never leave. I hardly pay them anything. It's like the people you're talking about on the conveyor belt. They're committed to these
You have
people.
their hearts. and-
They love them. They take them to church. They take them to the doctor. They're amazing.
Any other comments, any other questions, any concerns? Then I wait a motion that we move this item forward on onto our next budget retreat meeting, and with a recommendation that after due diligence and extensive conversation and investigation, that we recommend approval. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries, and we'll forward it on to the budget meeting, recommending approval. And I want to thank Ray and Elaine for adjusting their schedule and spending the afternoon with us, and
Anytime.
like to thank Chairman Hughes for instilling his confidence in me.
Think you did a great job.
Although
Thank
it's
you.
returned-
Thank all of y'all. Thank you both. Questions, well.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Because we need to know what.
They were this big.